They absolutely knew that they were giving bribes, and they absolutely benefited from those bribes. But they also structured everything so that they could rationalize to themselves that they were not giving bribes. It's like if you make a New Year's resolution with your wife to eat healthy, but you still eat junk food, and you justify it by saying, no, babe, I am eating healthy. Listen, there is real fruit in Hostess fruit pies.
If you'd like to earn CPE credit for listening to this episode, visit earmarkcpe.com. Download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Continuing education has never been so easy. And now, on to the episode.
Hello, and welcome to Oh My Fraud, a true crime podcast where our criminals probably won't kick you in the back, but they will gladly accept a kickback. I'm Greg Kyte.
And I'm Caleb Newquist.
Caleb, before we get into it, let's read a listener review real quick. Cool?
All right.
A listener whose screen name is Cassie123123 says, I've been here since the first few episodes, but my friends make fun of me for listening because I literally have no connections to finance. I don't even know what CPE credit is, LOL, but I do love learning about nonviolent crime, and you guys get the job done while being absolutely hilarious. I've learned so much about accounting too. Keep it up.
That's a very nice review.
So nice. Also, shame on your friends, Cassie.
Yeah, your friends. Yeah, you need new friends.
We'll be your friends. Stick around. We'll be your earbud friends who talk to you directly into your brain.
If you like Oh My Fraud, regardless of your connection to finance and accounting, please take a minute to write us a review. Who knows? We might even read yours on the show. Also, if your firm is looking for in-house ethics or fraud training that doesn't suck, we do that. We also do keynote addresses at events and conferences. If you want more info on pricing and availability, send us an email at ohmyfraud@earmarkcpe.com.
Awesome. So, Caleb,
yes,
I'm very excited about today's episode.
All right.
We did a webinar on the same topic years ago, although it does not feel like years ago. It was years ago.
It feels like a long time
to
ago.
you. It does.
It does. Yeah. No, it doesn't seem recent at all.
Well, this case is all about an airplane manufacturer who has gotten into a lot of trouble for some major screw-ups.
That's right. But this airplane manufacturer isn't the one whose doors are blowing out, whose wheels are falling off, and who's stranded 2 astronauts in outer space. This story is about the other one. Today's story is about Airbus.
Before we talk about Airbus, we have to talk about the goddamn Watergate scandal again. Again.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to our episode about money laundering, episode 52, then you might not know how much I dislike the Watergate scandal. It's complicated, it's stupid, it's boring. Sure, it led to Nixon's resignation, and we had to be interested in it because it was part of the origin story of our modern laws and understanding of money laundering, but I hate it. I'm over it. It happened like literally when I was being born, and I wish that it would just go away.
Isn't there some kind of like important date in the Watergate scandal that like is the same day as your birthday?
It was like, I think it was exactly 3 weeks before my birthday that they broke into the Watergate Hotel.
The day you came into the world.
3 weeks before the day I came into the world.
He resigned, or was it something else?
I don't think anything happened on my birthday, but it was
okay.
it was all right around there. So
this is so great because Greg, I love Watergate.
I know.
As if you've listened to episode 52, you may know this. And I have to tell you, you would probably be disturbed to know how many movies and or TV shows I've watched about Watergate.
Like all of them?
Not all of them.
Okay.
No, but a lot of them. And I've watched Oliver Stone's Nixon probably a dozen times or more.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and that's like a 3-hour movie. Like there's no business. I have no one has any business watching that movie that many times. And yet I did. So I saw Frost Nixon when it was on Broadway. And then that was...
Wait, there was a Broadway
Well, it was
Please
a
tell me
play
it was a
first.
musical.
No, it was a play. It wasn't a musical. It was just a play.
Damn
yeah,
it.
sorry. It would probably make a decent musical. But anyway, it was a play first, and then they made it a movie. And I still saw the movie, even though I saw the play.
Okay.
And so, and
I'm envisioning springtime for Nixon.
yeah, Springtime for Nixon.
Yeah.
It's pretty much,
Yeah.
that's actually the perfect. That would have been the perfect song. But anyway, and I have to say the most recent one that I watched there were actually two new ones in the last couple of years. One was called Gaslit, which was with Julia Roberts and Sean Penn.
Okay.
And that was a pretty good one. And then the most recent one I watched was called The Plumbers with Woody Harrelson and Justin Theroux.
Okay.
And it is hilarious. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Okay.
Watergate is hilarious, Greg.
I-
You should like it. This
maybe-
is what I'm trying to tell you.
I might look into the plumbers one because I remember seeing the trailer for that and it looked funny, but then it was like Watergate pass. So maybe with this ringing endorsement, I'll renew a membership to Max and watch the plumbers.
Justin Theroux is in rare form.
Okay.
As G. Gordon Liddy.
It looked like the costumes and makeup and wigs was pretty rad.
Outstanding.
Cool. That can do it for me. One way or another, unfortunately, we have to be fortunately for you, unfortunately for me, we have to be interested in it again because the Watergate investigation also uncovered how corporations in the 1970s were making all kinds of illegal political contributions, not just to politicians in the United States, but also to foreign governments. And we talked about this a little bit, just kind of going back and forth about the script for today's podcast. It's like, how did they uncover that? They uncovered everything in these investigations,
except where Jimmy Hoffa was, but he hadn't even disappeared yet. So maybe if only it had happened afterward.
Yeah, finding where people are buried who aren't dead yet was outside of the scope of the investigation. Really,
yes.
When you look at it, but. Regardless, that was the whole thing. At that point, it feels like in today's American politics, it's so goddamn crazy that it's nothing shocks anybody anymore. But back then, this scandal
must have shocked everybody.
Everybody, and they're like, we've got to get to the bottom of everything right now, and that's the other thing, and fix everything.
Right.
So that's why the Watergate was, like we said, origin story of money laundering. Also, that maybe not bribes obviously were not, they weren't legal before then, but they ratcheted up the enforcement of that. So these transactions were often concealed in secret slush funds. So when these companies would pay off foreign officials, instead of posting the transaction to an account called bribes and labeling it illegal payment of bribes, they would basically post it to miscellaneous and label it none of your goddamn business.
May I just say, if you are not hip to all the fraud vocab, a slush fund, Greg, how would you define slush fund?
It is the fund where we pay for stuff that we don't really want to talk about.
Yeah, essentially.
It's
money kind of set aside for things that come up.
Right. I think of it a lot.
The fixer fund.
It's like, because petty cash is money that you set aside for trivial purchases that you don't want to keep track of.
Right.
And slush fund is the money you set aside for stuff that it's like, like you said, it's
non-trivial.
Not non-trivial, but also kind of like, we'd rather not really talk about it.
Right.
So
it's for the ransoms and the
right. And not that slush funds can't be, there are legitimate slush funds where,
yes,
you want to, again, my day job, I manage medical office buildings. So we have slush funds for, a massive overhaul of our HVAC system.
Yep.
Where, we stash away a little bit every year so that when we have to bite the bullet, we do that. But there's also very illegitimate slush funds as well.
All right.
The extent of here's the thing, Caleb. The extent of the corporate bribery was a little bit shocking, quite shocking. Over 400 U.S. companies were found to have made at least questionable payments totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Major corporations, including well-known multinationals like Lockheed and Northrop Grumman and Exxon, were all implicated in these bribes and slush funds and bad accounting of bribes and slush funds. In response to these revelations, Congress passed the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977. The act aimed to curb these unethical practices by making it illegal for U.S. companies and individuals to bribe foreign officials. The law also required that companies maintain accurate slush fund-free records and establish internal controls to make sure that corrupt practices like giving bribes aren't happening within your company. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act applies to U.S. citizens and U.S. companies, but, and this is very important, it also applies to any foreign companies listed on any U.S. stock exchange or foreign companies that have a presence within the United States.
The Watergate break-in happened in 1972, and the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act was passed in 1977. But it was just a few years before both of those events that the airplane manufacturer Airbus came into being.
Very interesting, because I would have thought that Airbus had been around since shortly after the Wright brothers, but the fact that they were established during my lifetime that was a interesting fact that surfaced through this case.
Yeah, I don't know, with a name like Airbus, I'm not sure early 20th century humor had really kind of. They would have been like, "Well, that's a bit of a cheeky name, isn't it? Well, I don't think this is a very serious business that we're doing here. We can't. It's not a bus in the sky."
I always assumed that it wasn't a cheeky name.
But I mean,
they're like, well, what is it? Because I mean, airplane, Airbus is kind of like, we know what a bus is, and this is kind of like
that goes in the air,
and it's just in the air instead. So yeah,
I don't know. It's not cheeky. I feel like it's slightly cheeky.
I attribute it more to like British literalism than British humor, but I don't get either. So you could very well be correct.
Someone set us straight, please.
Yeah, please.
All right. In the 1960s, the United States had established itself as the dominant player in the aerospace industry. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom recognized that without some kind of joint program to develop and manufacture airplanes, Europe would be left behind in the wake of the U.S. And so Airbus was formed as a joint venture in 1970 by French and German aerospace firms, which were later joined by Spanish and British companies to create short-range and medium-range high-capacity airplanes to compete with American companies like Boeing, Lockheed, and Northrop Grumman.
Grumman. I think it's Grumman. Yeah,
Good
you nailed
God.
it with Grumman. Also, hilarious. I mean, I'm sure it does not go unnoticed that some of those companies were also the exact ones that were implicated in the findings that led to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Fantastic. Small world.
Yeah. And compete they did. It took over 30 years, but finally, in 2003, Airbus surpassed Boeing to become the world's largest aircraft manufacturer. Boeing took back the title in 2004, and the two have gone back and forth with the title ever since.
One day in 2016, out of the blue, the Parquet National Financier was contacted by Airbus. Now, we're not even going to speculate as to whether or not you know what the Parquet National Financier is, because you don't. It's the government organization responsible for investigating serious and complex financial crimes in France. And Airbus's largest factory is in France. And for the sake of brevity, and to not torture our listeners who actually know the correct pronunciation of Parquet National Financier, we're just going to refer to it as the PNF.
Very considerate.
I thought so.
Yeah.
So why did Airbus contact the PNF in 2016?
Why, Greg?
I'm so glad you asked. They were narking themselves out. They were turning themselves in because, listen, they had conducted an internal audit earlier that year, and that internal audit brought to light the fact that Airbus's sales department was doing bribes, all the bribes, bribing individuals and bribing foreign officials, all in an attempt to secure more sales contracts. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why would Airbus narc itself out? That is also a great question. Were you thinking that, Caleb?
That's 100% what I was thinking,
I
Greg.
thought so.
Why would Airbus narc itself out?
To save their own ass. That's why, Caleb.
Oh,
and we're going to get into that in a significant amount of detail later in the show. But for now, just know that Airbus turned in Airbus for bribes that ultimately benefited Airbus.
So the PNF starts to investigate the bribery situation at Airbus, which I think is fantastic. Airbus was like, hey, PNF, we think we've been paying a lot of bribes. Can you figure out if we really have and to what extent? Socialism at its finest, right?
Absolutely. That's what we'd rather have the government do this job. So we'll hand it over to the PNF.
Please help us. Turns out they had paid bribes, and to a great extent. Here's how it worked. Airbus hired contractors described as secret agents to sell planes for them. These secret agents would tell Airbus how much of a commission it would require for them to close the sale in question. The agent would direct Airbus to pay the commission to a sketchy shell company with opaque ownership. And boom, the secret sales agent closes the sale and Airbus achieves dominance in the aerospace industry. It's kind of like, that's basically the story of the underwear gnomes in South Park, right?
I have not seen that episode of South Park.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
I'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
So many shows
classic.
I need to watch now.
Yeah, I mean, South Park, I don't know if you have to watch it.
Okay.
Never mind.
All right.
Forget I said anything.
Yeah, I will.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But the commissions paid to these secret agents were inflated because a significant portion of the commission was actually being used to bribe various decision makers who were in the market to purchase some airplanes. Structuring it where the bribe was part of the commission gave plausible deniability to Airbus. We just pay the commissions. We don't know anything about any bribes. But they knew. They could also say that the commissions were very large because the people they were paying were really good at selling planes. You know, you get what you pay for kind of thing. But it was really you get what you pay bribes for kind of thing.
Did we mention that these secret agents were doing lots of bribes?
I believe we mentioned it.
Because they were doing lots of bribes. The Airbus intermediaries were bribing people in Ghana, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Taiwan, Indonesia, and China, and likely in a lot of other countries as well. The reason we're not giving an exhaustive list of all the countries where Airbus bribed people is because Airbus never went to trial over this. Instead, Airbus entered into what's called a deferred prosecution agreement, which is basically probation for corporations, where they pay a big fine and they say, yeah, we're going to be good from now on. And the authorities are like, okay, but if you bribe even one more person, we're going to come back and charge you with all these actual crimes. And when you don't go to trial, the world doesn't get to know all the sordid details of who bribed who and where.
That's not really very fun.
No, but that said, we do have a few sordid details of who they bribed and where, or maybe better said, of who they bribed and how. There was one example that was reported on where a $50 million bribe was paid, but not directly to an airline executive. Instead, Airbus paid $50 million to sponsor a sports team that was owned by the airline executive. And in return for the sponsorship, Airbus received an order for 180 planes. And keep in mind, Caleb, I looked this up.
Yes.
The cheapest Airbus plane, it's the model A318, cost just over $70 million. And this bribe was for $50 million. and they sold 180 planes. Probably a lot of them were not the cheapest model. So basically, if you do the math, this bribe was equivalent to some kind of buy 179 planes and get one plane almost free.
Yeah, almost free.
Yeah, like deeply discounted. That's basically where this works out. So it kind of makes sense that they'd want to do this.
Wait a minute, Greg. Are you saying that the ROI on bribes is very, very good?
I think it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I think it's very well. There's that old adage where it's like half of your advertising budget is completely wasted. You just don't know which half. Bribes are not like that. 100% of your bribe budget is effective.
Yeah.
So that's also, and Caleb, I am 100% sure this is not the case, but in my brain, the sports team that was being sponsored was like the Pee Wee baseball team that the airline executive's kid played on.
Yeah.
So like everybody else, all the other Pee Wee teams are showing up with team T-shirts sponsored by the local VFW, but this guy's kids team gets dropped off at every game by an Airbus H-160 helicopter. Again, that is 100% not what happened, but I would contest that it is loosely based on actual events.
Yeah.
So, so fun. Bribes are fun. Here's another fun bribe, Caleb.
Oh, yeah.
There was another Airbus bribe was structured such that, again, instead of handing the airline executive a sack of cash, instead Airbus hired the airline executive's spouse as a consultant on an aircraft contract. But despite being paid a handsome amount, the spouse had exactly zero experience in aviation and no experience that could possibly qualify them to be a consultant for an aerospace organization. And I think that this is also just
so it's basically a no-show job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's precisely what it is. I mean, I don't know. Maybe for the sake of appearances, they showed up to the meetings and just sat at the table,
right?
Just to be like, yeah, I did.
Had some coffee.
I was there. I was at the conference table.
Let the record reflect that.
I'm here as a consultant. The fact that they did not consult with me is not my concern. That's their concern at this point. Mind you, I have great ideas on how to structure airline contracts. Just FYI, my expertise was just not called upon in this particular instance. But yeah, I think this is so delightful. I've written a short a play to dramatize how the airline executive's spouse got hired. But in my version, the spouse gets hired to fly the planes because they were just as unqualified to fly the planes as they were to work as a consultant about the planes. So Caleb, in this play, you're going to play the part of the airline executive, and I'll play the part of Airbus.
Okay. All right.
And action.
Sorry, Airbus. We don't think we want to buy your planes.
Well, what if we hired your spouse for $1 million to fly the planes?
That sounds great. But my spouse doesn't know how to fly a plane.
Not a problem, because we actually prefer if this was more of a work from home kind of situation.
But you can't fly a plane from home.
So it sounds like we've got a deal. Thank you so much. It was marvelous. Oscar-worthy performances on both parts.
You might learn to fly.
As we mentioned earlier, Airbus turned themselves in. It has been estimated that if they had not turned themselves in, that is, if they had been caught making these bribes, Airbus would have been fined around 8 billion euros.
Whew. Wow.
That's a big fine.
That's a lot of euros.
Yeah. Their actual fine was just a meager 3.6 billion euros, which, to be fair, still made it the largest fine for bribery in world history.
In world history.
Fantastic.
Not in European history. In world history.
Super job, everyone.
Amazing.
Super job.
The Airbus just clearly showing its dominance in the industry by getting not just the most planes delivered, but also paying the largest bribe in world history.
Yeah. Yeah. Greg, you can't teach that kind of stuff.
You either got it or you don't.
That's right. Another factor that motivated Airbus to turn themselves in was simply to stay in business. Certain French laws require automatic revocation of licenses for companies that are found guilty of bribery. Ooh, that's more than a slap on a wrist.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, because that's the same kind of thing. Like in the United States, there's like mandatory sentencing. I think it's the same kind of thing. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
By turning themselves in, Airbus was able to negotiate that deferred prosecution agreement, and the deferred prosecution agreement allowed them to retain all their licensing so that they could continue to operate as a legitimate business in France. You also might be wondering how the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act figures into all this. Well, since Airbus does business in the United States, their bribes fall under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which resulted in the Department of Justice joining the PNF in their investigation. The Brits also joined the investigation with their Serious Fraud Office, which is the actual name of a department within the government of the United Kingdom. The Serious Fraud Office.
Yeah.
It is not the Silly Fraud Office where
It is
Mr. Bean
not.
works.
Nope.
It's the Serious Fraud Office where Professor Snape works.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The 3.6 billion euro fine was split between the three organizations, with the PNF getting the largest chunk and the DOJ only getting about €500 million.
€500 million. Why do they not even worth their time?
I mean, it's probably a real shitty dormitory on, the campus at Quantico.
Yeah. Although I'm sure it was a good payday for the DOJ. Yeah, I'm sure it's fine.
As a result of all this, the CEO of Airbus, Tom Enders, resigned, which is unsurprising at first glance. But keep in mind, as CEO, he was aware that bribery had been part of the culture at Airbus, and he was hell-bent to eradicate bribery from the company. Apparently, Enders was hands-on with the decision to self-report to the authorities, and after the scandal broke, he was not forced to resign, but he voluntarily resigned, taking personal responsibility for what happened on his watch and saying that the company would be able to deal with the problem more effectively if he left. From everything we have read about it, he seemed legitimately ashamed and contrite and committed to Airbus becoming more ethical, even to the point of torpedoing his own career.
It also shouldn't be overlooked that after the deferred prosecution agreement came to light, a class action suit was filed on behalf of Airbus's shareholders, claiming that Airbus misled them and misrepresented their operations from 2016 through 2020. And as of this recording, the class action lawsuit is still pending.
Okay, so Gregory, Milhouse, Kyte, did we learn anything?
Yes, we did. I think every time we talk about bribes on the show, we have to talk about how weird bribes are.
Yes.
And not because I think that everyone has this concept of bribes
Not weird
being,
in like a J.D. Vance kind of way.
No.
No.
Weird as in it's not as cut and dried as everybody likes to think in their head.
Right.
Because generally when we think of bribes, we think of it as being a very explicit thing where where someone is
like a cartoony bribe.
Yeah,
where one person walks up to a number with a big sack with a big dollar sign on it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you say cartoony because we were contemplating playing a clip from The Simpsons on here where Homer and Bart are running the ring toss at a carnival, and Police Chief Wiggum comes up and asks them for a bribe, and that's very much where he's like, hey, I got to shut you down unless you've got some money for me, is basically how it goes. And regardless, the line between bribery and marketing is very, very blurry.
Yes.
Even like an example from my own life, the company that I work for, we bank with a bank called Zion's First National Bank.
Okay.
And every year they offer to take me to a BYU basketball game for free.
Oh.
Is that a bribe? I don't think so.
Okay.
But
yeah, you
also,
don't like basketball, right?
Yeah, well, that's why it's not a bribe, because I never take them up on it because I feel like I don't want to waste my night going to a basketball game. But also,
yeah, where they won't be serving beer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. They might not even be serving caffeinated sodas.
Right.
And again, I kind of want to land on no, that's not a bribe. But then the question is, why is it not? because they're giving me something for free, and the
Yes.
expectation is that I will continue to keep my accounts at their bank.
Yes.
Seems like a bribe, but it falls under marketing. I'm switching my CPA services that my company uses from a national company to a local firm.
Okay.
And by making that switch, because there's a number of LLCs that need tax preparation, but one of the companies, their tax prep fees are going to go from $27,000 to less than $10,000. We're
Jeez,
saving
that's a good deal.
Yeah, a ridiculous amount of money just by switching from but it's we know that's the case.
Wait, so what did they bribe you with?
Well, that's the thing. If I go back to the national firm and
Okay.
say that we'll stay with them if they give me and my team a suite at the Delta Center to watch the Jazz game against the Bucks,
Yeah.
that's bribery. But the Zions Bank thing is not bribery.
Right.
Which is, and again, it's like it's pretty weird that it's both. We're because it's not. There's the thing. It's not cheap to get those suites
No.
for NBA games. No, but it's a lot less than the $27,000 of revenue that these guys are going to lose by me switching companies.
Right.
So it would make sense for them to at least entertain the idea of giving me said bribe.
None of this is legal advice, by the way.
None of it's legal advice. But the point is where it's so weird because you can't tell me there's no bright line where marketing stops and bribery starts.
Oh yeah, no,
That's where I'm getting at with this, because the other case that we dealt with with tons of bribery was the Fat Leonard case.
Yep.
And it was the same thing there, where there is a bright line in the military where if you didn't hear the Fat Leonard case, fantastic episode. Look for it on our list of episodes. But Fat Leonard was bribing the Navy to come and use his services. And he would do things like give them Cuban cigars all the way up to hiring prostitutes and throwing these over-the-top parties for naval officers.
Right.
But you think about like a cigar, like, hey, thanks for coming to my port. Here's a cigar.
Yeah.
The Navy did have a bright line. You could not accept any gift over $20 US in value.
Oh my God.
So
basically a Starbucks gift card.
yeah, as long as it was for $15.
Yeah, as long as it's for $5 to $15, fine.
Exactly.
If that's a $50 Starbucks card, you give that fucking thing back.
Exactly. You're getting court-martialed
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
So there is a bright line there, but just in civilian operations, there's no bright line in terms of where where it's marketing and where it's a bribe. So, like I said, weird.
It is weird. It is weird because whenever you're privy to one of those exchanges, it feels good, whatever is going on.
Wait, when you mean when you're the one who's getting the basketball tickets?
Yeah, of
Oh
course.
yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does. And that's the thing is I don't like because I have a very a strong enduring relationship with my banker at
Yes.
Zions Bank.
Yeah.
And when he calls me and says, "Hey, we got those BYU tickets again. You want to come?" I'm not like, "How dare you, sir? How
My
dare you?"
integrity is not for sale.
I can't believe the audacity that you would have to ask me a question like that. I'm switching banks on principle now. Good day, sir. Good. I said good day. Yeah, it's
Self-righteous Greg voice right there, folks.
That's the very
sanctimonious
much so.
Greg, everyone.
Okay, here's how it gets. Here's another way it gets weird.
Okay.
So the ACFE, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, their 2024 report to the nations says that the median loss due to corruption, which is bribes, is one of the many corruption schemes that they look at in their report. But they say the median loss due to corruption is $200,000.
Okay.
For that, it was $200,000 for the basket of cases that they looked at for the 2024 report. And what's weird is I'm not sure how the ACFE quantifies that $200,000 because let's look at the Airbus case. If they gave $50 million to secure a contract for 180 to sell 180 planes.
Yep.
But that company was still going to buy 180 planes. They needed 180 planes.
Right. They needed the planes.
So how much money did they lose by giving the business to Airbus? Probably, maybe, arguably none.
Probably.
Because they might have just had like a Groupon for Boeing planes for $50 million off as long as you buy a minimum order of 180 planes. So again, how do you
blackout dates over Christmas, of course.
Exactly. But how do you quantify the loss that's due? Because again, there is probably going to be a loss due to fraud, because it would be easy to it would be easy to quantify that if I did get my bribe from the CPA firm. If I went and said, "Hey, give me some jazz tickets to keep my $27,000," then you go, "Okay, the business lost $17,000 due to fraud." That's but again, it's not always like that, and we actually had to have a board meeting to vote as to whether or not we were going to change companies for our CPA services.
Right.
So there was a non-zero chance that we would have just paid that $27,000 instead of the $10,000 regardless. So I'm just saying, the big thing for me, bribes are weird.
I can't disagree.
Yeah.
I will say, though, excellent story. And I just, no fault of yours, because this case was excellent, but I think the lead got a little buried. And so I'll just raise it again for those in the back. And that is that this was the largest bribery case in the history of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that cannot go unnoticed.
Right.
And I think, again, Airbus, very impressive. Airbus.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, even if no lessons were learned, this case very much has a place here on the Oh My Fraud podcast, even if it was the for no other reason than just magnitude.
Yes. This case is in the pantheon of great frauds.
The Hall of Frames. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Anyway, I enjoyed this very much. Thank you, Greg.
Oh, well, Caleb, you are so welcome. And again, it was fun to revisit this several years after the first time we dove into it.
Also, if you're an employee of Boeing and your feelings are hurt by any jokes that we make about your employer, too bad.
We'd love to leave us a review. We'll read it on the next episode.
Yeah.
So,
or send us an email and tell us how upset you are, and I'll be happy to delete it instantly.
I'll cherish it. They're just nice. Those are good ones. The ones where people are upset for no good reason.
Oh, okay. You don't mind those?
No. The ones.
See, I would say, like, I try to protect Greg's fragile self-esteem from the hate mail that we receive, which we don't receive much. But
yeah. But you do.
I do try to protect Greg,
and it needs
mail.
protecting. So you do a very good job, and I'm very grateful for that. But despite all of this, that is it for this episode. And remember, the internal audit department at Airbus blew the doors off of this bribery scandal, whereas Boeing's doors just blew off.
And also remember, if you leave a 5-star review for Oh My Fraud, Greg will give you $100.
No, I will not.
He will.
No,
if you want to drop us a line and get your money from Greg, send us an email.
I will not give you money.
If you'd like to reach me directly, just go to LinkedIn and find me /Caleb Newquist. If you'd like to find Greg on LinkedIn, just look for the guy handing out those $100 bills for 5-star podcast reviews.
That is not a representation that will be honored. Nope, not by me or by the Oh My Fraud organization.
Gosh. All right. Well, he still wants the review, though.
I do want. That's true.
Right. Oh My Fraud is written by Greg Kyte and myself. Our producer is Zach Frank. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen on Earmark, you can earn free CPE credits. It's that time of year, Greg.
It is, and it's so easy to earn your CPE through Earmark. And if you don't have a subscription, get one because you're kind of dumb if you don't.
And if you listen to this show and you like it and you don't know what CPE is, you're actually our favorites. Too much?
You are.
Too
you
much.
are. We're
No.
looking at you, Cassie. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Join us next time for more avarice, swindlers, and scams from stories that will make you say, "Ooh, my
Give
fraud."
me 50 million. Oh, my fraud.